What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Back Pocket Podcast. Today, we are continuing our Buster Boom series with the Miami Dolphins, team in the AFC East. And before I introduce my other co-host, I just want to say this is usually one of the episodes we look forward to the most because, our co-host today, Dylan Shalom, he is a diehard Miami Dolphins fan, and I am a New York Jets fan. So I don't really like the Miami Dolphins, to say the least.
I'm doing really well, and I'm excited to talk about my favorite team, but also just talk ball in general. That's almost my catchphrase for intros at this point, so I gotta carry that on.
Before we talk about the Miami Dolphins, we gotta get into a little background. And Dylan is always someone who I feel like is an optimistic Dolphins fan. And with the Miami Dolphins having the longest playoff drought in the NFL
Oh,
since
so are we going
2000.
part two here? Is this the roles reversed? Is that what we're?
Yes, this is the roles reversed.
Okay. All right.
I was
Oh,
the
fair enough.
moment you did it with the Jets,
Fair
I was
enough.
thinking about it.
Fair enough.
So I feel like the past few years, Dylan's like, this is the year the Dolphins are finally going to win a playoff game. This is the year they're going to finally be contenders. And then they lose again and again. And it's been that way really since 2000. So, Dylan, with Tua Tagovailoa either
Don't go
being
by
hurt
Loa.
for a playoff game or not really playing well in his lone start in a playoff game, what makes you think this is the year they actually kind of break open and be a serious team?
Well, I don't. I don't think this is the year. I don't think that
Oh,
the team is.
well, that was a terrible setup then.
I don't think this year is any better than last season. The only thing that Miami can rely on this year that will help them more so than last year is just weakness in the AFC East. And I think that with the Bills regressing a bit and the Jets being the Jets and the Patriots definitely being a bit regressed, I think Miami, this is their year to strike for the division. And last year was another one where they should have been able to. But the division has not been weaker than it is this year for them. But outside of that, I really just don't think that they have the playoff pedigree. And I don't think that they're as good as they were last year in order to get the home field advantage that they really need. So maybe a playoff win. A playoff win is what I would expect from this team and what I hope for from this team. But I don't think that this team's any better than they were last year.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, being serious, I think I do agree. I do agree with you. I think this is like a team that I think has regressed, but I also think this is a team that still is worthy of being in the playoffs like they were the past few years. Um, I do disagree a little bit about the NFC, not the NFC, AFC East necessarily having regressed. I mean, so a lot of people will think that. I still think that all the teams in the AFC, all the teams in the AFC East are like can be competitive this year. But what I still think that Miami definitely do have a chance. I think they have a chance to take the division. I wouldn't consider themselves favorites, and I think last year, in my opinion, was their best chance. But let's get into the first of all, when it's the Miami Dolphins, the first thing you got to talk about is the quarterback. And Tua Tagovailoa
Tagovailoa.
is Tagovailoa is one of the most polarizing quarterbacks in the NFL. I feel like that's inarguable. There are a lot of very ranging opinions on Tua.
The best moments from
Especially
this channel. The best moments
yep,
from this channel
have
have
all
come
been about
over this
Tua. It's
discussion.
always been about Tua. He has been the one constant, I feel like, since Dylan entered the
Well,
channel, he has been the
yeah.
one constant about he's been if we were bored, we didn't know what to talk about, we talked about Tua because he's always been an interesting conversation. And now Dylan will say he's won the argument because now Tua is in position where we're seeing all these quarterbacks getting paid and Tua's time is coming up. And after a career year, I would say, right? I don't know
Yeah.
his exact numbers, but this is a
So
career year.
it was his career
La-
year. I think if he stayed healthy in 2022, he would
Mhm,
have had similar numbers to this year, but he led the league in passing
mhm.
yards, so career
Yeah.
year.
So with a career year, he is in positions. A lot of people would say he's in position to become the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. And Dylan would say that makes him that says he wins the argument.
Oh,
And
hell yeah. I won the
no,
argument regardless, by the way.
okay.
I
No. That's fair. I think the argument has also shifted as time has gone on
Yeah.
more so in Dylan's favor. So I will give credit for that, but this isn't about petty arguments. We're legitimately breaking down the Dolphins. So what what do you just think about this contract situation overall? Because it's clear that Tua is going to get paid. He is going to get a bag. It's going to be at bare minimum for me 50 million. If it's taking this long, he's at worst getting 50 million. And that's what he deserves, honestly. I mean, with obviously with the salary cap consistently going up, you got to get paid as much as you can. And Tua, no matter your opinions on him, he was one of the best quarterbacks stats wise in the NFL last year. So he's going to get paid. But I'm curious, what do you think about paying Tua and what is necessarily worth it for the Dolphins if they for them to be kind of still be competitive? What is worth paying Tua, who is a good quarterback, but what do you see his value be?
So, first of all, I just want to start off by saying whether it happens in the next week or it happens in July or in September, this deal is going to get done. There
Mm-hmm.
is no way around it for any of the parties because Tua is the starting quarterback in Miami. Miami don't have a better option. They can't rebuild, and it just doesn't make sense to not do this. So, no matter what the money is, it's going to get done. However, I do think that the Trevor Lawrence deal today really complicated things because the reports coming out of both camps, and Tua is super antsy to get this done. He said those were his exact words in the interview. He said, "I'm antsy. I'm not concerned, but I'm antsy." I think that the Trevor Lawrence deal complicates it because he was probably looking at golf numbers, maybe a little bit more. And now that Trevor Lawrence came in and he got this mega deal, I think Tua is going to end up getting upwards of 55, whereas I don't think that that would have been the case before this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, obviously, I feel like our big conversations with Tua have been comparing him to quarterbacks like Justin Herbert and Josh Allen. But one that I don't know if we've seen actually a lot on the channel is I feel like we've talked often about Tua versus Trevor Lawrence. And you're very adamant that Tua
Yeah.
is not
Tua's
even better, but you would say he's significantly
significantly better. Yes.
better. So yeah, and I feel like Tua's camp, seeing the numbers that he put up, would think the same. And I would I feel like at this point I would be kind of surprised if he it doesn't end up being the highest paid quarterback in the NFL
I
over
still
Lawrence
think
or over
I
Burrow.
still think Burrow is going to end up being higher paid,
Well, they're
but
tied right now, I think. Tila and Burrow.
Elon Burrow, so then Tua is going to get more. Yeah.
That's what I would say
Yeah.
would happen. I think it's very possible. And look, I think I'm someone obviously I'm not necessarily like I'm not someone who says, "Oh yeah, Tua's just a product of the system. He's a bad quarterback that just is lucky to be in a good system." He does help make the system work more than a lot of other quarterbacks would. But at the same time, this is something that we actually talked about off camera again and talked about that while Tua is one of the best quarterbacks for Mike McDaniel's system, one of my concerns is that the system that Miami has in place places a cap on how much a quarterback can influence a game. And obviously, the best teams, like the Kansas City Chiefs, need their quarterback to influence the game significantly. And that's how they win games, that's how they win championships. With Tua kind of being the best quarterback in a system that, in my opinion, think that a system that actually places less of an emphasis on quarterbacks winning games compared to other systems. That's where my concern is with paying him money because while I think Tua is one of the best quarterbacks, I might not sound like I'm making sense, but like, do you kind of understand what I'm saying?
I know
Like,
exactly what you're saying, but
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I do think that people listening might have trouble because
No, yeah,
we've had this
yeah,
conversation
yeah,
before.
exactly. Basically, I think basically what I'm saying is that the talent level of the quarterback matters less in this system than in most other systems. And that's my case for saying that
So
Tua might not be worth the money that they're paying him, even if he is a great quarterback for that system. And that would be my main concern.
So talent level is pretty much unimportant as far as this goes because Tua has shown that he can command this offense to be the best in the league on their day, and they are not going to be looking in any other direction. This deal, again, it's going to get done. The numbers
Mm-hmm.
are insignificant until
Right.
it happens. Like whatever Tua, it's not whatever Tua asks. It's a negotiation, but at the end of the day, they will cave into each other's demands, and the deal will get done. But as far as Tua being a system quarterback, which is what the argument has been for the past 2 years, it went from Tua can't play in the NFL to Tua's the best system quarterback. And I don't think that's necessarily true, but I really don't care because he is in this system and he has executed it at such a high level that I would love for him to continue to be this system quarterback that carries this team into playoff games. Now, where the discussion has been now is where does it go from there? Where does it go up? Once you get to the playoffs, it's a different monster. You can't just rely on Mike McDaniel scheming open plays. And again, I'm not saying Tua relied on it. Tua was the system. Tua made the system tick because his timing and his accuracy is better than, I'm going to say, any other quarterback in the league. But I think with what Tua's done this offseason, first of all, he had never worked with a design quarterback coach. He was always just working with his receivers, his offensive coordinator, and his strength coach. This season he went and he got with a quarterback coach who has worked with guys like Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers in the past, and is he based on the reports I've seen, and again, reports are very like they're going to be on the side of the player. They're not going to say that he didn't get better, but reports are saying that Tua's arm has improved massively with off-platform throws and with just pure strength. So that's a good sign. And then another development in his game is that he lost about 15 pounds for training camp.
Hmm.
And a
Hmm.
big complaint about him last season was that he lost his flair of pocket movement because he put on so many pounds after the concussions. And people are concerned about this because they don't want him to get hurt again. But also, it's a ridiculous amount of weight to lose in one offseason while still maintaining the muscle he has. But again, reports are always going to come out player friendly. But based on everything I've seen, I don't think that it's a concern the amount of weight he's lost in this offseason just because the muscle mass is still up. There's still video of him lifting the same that he was. And again, his arm strength seems to have improved. We saw a dime he threw in minicamp. Again, minicamp is minicamp, but didn't look like he took anything off the ball. Still looks like the same type of spiral. I think we're going to see an improved Tua Tagovailoa this year, but the difference in the team might not be able to show that on the stat sheet.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like the goal last season, more than anything, was not necessarily about Tua's game, but making sure that he'd get through a 17 game season.
So that
I
was
would
his goal in
say,
the offseason. That was his goal
I
in the
say
offseason.
that was the main goal.
Yeah.
This year, I feel like the goal is now rather than just playing it, but like, and he had a good season. I mean, a great season actually, especially by his standards. I think it was a great season, especially considering the previous few years. But I think this year's the goal is to kind of show what he can do outside of McDaniel's system, and I think that definitely the losing weight I think definitely shows that where they really expect him to kind of, I mean, obviously college is college, it's very different than the NFL, but Tua was considered much more of an improviser. He still was obviously known as like the point guard kind of quarterback, but he was much more of an improviser as a prospect coming out of college, and I think that's something maybe I think the Dolphins will want to lean into, and I think it makes sense now with Tua leaning kind of leaning down and is like kind of a sign that the Dolphins want to have a fallback that, hey, if there's a game where McDaniel gets out coached or the defense that they're going against has the answer for the offense that they're the Dolphins offense, then Tua can make plays by himself. He can kind of be the X factor. He can be like the get out of jail free card for the Dolphins that they really haven't gotten out of him the past few years, even if he has been a good he has had good seasons.
So
But
I'd like to jump in and just say last season we didn't see it when it mattered, but early in the season against the Chargers, he was that X factor.
oh yeah,
Early
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I
early
agree. Yeah,
early in the
early in the
season
season
last
he seemed
season,
to be a lot more
he
like I mean,
proved that he
also easier opponents, I will say.
yeah,
But at
no,
the same
that's part of the deal, but
mhm.
earlier in the season, he was improvising. He was doing the job on his own, along with the weapons he had, obviously. But he was playing at a very high level, and it dropped off towards the end of the season, partially with injuries, partially due to him losing confidence in himself, partially in McDaniel calling games in ways that I will never understand. But I do think over the course of the years, with the first team that Tua played in, the Flores and the Chan Gailey offenses and the George Godsey offenses, he was the razor in the talent. There's nobody from his first NFL offense that is still in the league. From the yeah, actually yeah, that's right. There's zero players from his first NFL offense that he started with that are rostered on a team. And
Someone give Lynn Bowden a chance.
someone give no, don't someone give Miles Gaskin a chance. He was solid enough. He should be on a roster, but Actually, Ahmed is on a roster. Ahmed
Mhm,
is on a roster. And Gesicki was not part of the first game. He was in the team eventually, but yeah. Point
mhm.
point being, he was the player that raised these guys from there into being they weren't a great NFL offense, but they
They were a bad NFL offense.
they ended
Yes.
up winning 9 games with
Mhm,
zero players that are in the league 3 years later.
mhm,
So Tua has proven that he can elevate talent. Now, when the talent on your team is already Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, now Odell Beckham coming into the scene,
mhm.
you want to play to their strengths. But what the Dolphins got away from last season was playing in the strengths of what their scheme does. So at some points last season, the game was give the ball to Tyreek Hill. And as good as Tyreek Hill is, the run game should have been working, and the run game was working, and Jalen Waddle was feeling neglected, and McDaniel kind of leaned away from the run game and Jalen Waddle and really anything other than Tyreek Hill when he felt any sort of pressure. So my biggest concern, and this is going to segue me into my next topic, is the offense last season, when they failed, they went to Tyreek Hill, right? In whatever way, shape, or form. But as the season went on, everyone knew what was going to happen. You didn't have to plan for a tricky Dolphins play, which at the start of the season was pretty much all they were known for. They were the shifty, fast team that's going to pull off a cool trick play. They have so many weapons. Eventually, and the Titans did it when Tyreek Hill was hurt. He was a decoy, and they didn't even care. They didn't guard Tyreek Hill as a decoy. They just pretty much like they neutralized the entire offense just by covering Tyreek Hill. And like they came into that game and they saw Tyreek Hill, he's a little hurt, he's going to play as a decoy. He wasn't playing as a decoy. He was still the primary receiving target. And then games went on, the Bills guarded Tyreek Hill well, the Chiefs guarded Tyreek Hill well barring one touchdown, and voila, you're out. So this season I would really like to see Mike McDaniel game plan better in late game situations to other players on the field, as well as have Tua come out of the pocket and make some plays on his own, which I'm very sure he can do.
Yeah, yeah, and like you said, perfect segue into our next topic, which is really kind of examining how the Dolphins team overall has changed. And let's start with the offense. I mean, skill position wise, I actually think this team has gotten better. I know we obviously I think Odell Beckham Jr. probably the I'll say like it's not a huge move, but it was like probably the loudest move.
It was the marquee move of the
It was
offseason.
the marquee move. It wasn't like a big money move though, and a lot of Dolphins fans didn't like it. A lot of general fans like in the NFL didn't like it. I actually like it. I mean, Odell Beckham Jr. should not be your wide receiver one. At this point, honestly, I don't think he should be your receiver two. But as your wide receiver three, he is a sure-handed guy who is capable of getting separation, making he we saw him make a few great catches with the Ravens as well. I think he's an ideal wide receiver three. I think I am perfectly fine with this move. And I think it also does play into your point about spraying the ball around and to having more guys that he could trust. Because last year, what the receiver three was Braxton
It was Braxton
Berrios,
Berrios or River
River
Craycraft.
Craycraft. Yeah, those aren't. I have experience with Braxton Berrios. He's not a receiver three. He is not that he cannot be trusted in those key situations. And I think Odell Beckham Jr. is someone that you can trust. And then you go down, adding Jonnu Smith as a tight end. I think he is
Yeah, that's
I
a move
think
I love.
I
I
like
think
that
that
move for
is
the Dolphins as well. I think he's a great blocker, which fits into McDaniel's scheme of like obviously in terms of running the ball, solid pass catcher as well. That I think Tua could get the ball to as like a safety valve if they need him to. I'd say he's an upgrade over Durham Smythe in that aspect. So
I'll tell you, I
I
think
actually
that
do think I think uh the overall skill position core has got better, and the running backs are kind of very similar. They added Jalen Wright in the draft as well. So no, I like what they did skill position wise.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I think that the skill position group, I think it got better in terms of name value because you got Odell Beckham and you got Jonnu
Mm,
Smith. And I think Jonnu Smith is my favorite move we made on the offensive side of the ball because we struggled I'm saying we a lot, but struggled in the red zone towards the end of the year because Tyreek Hill, again, was the only target. And the run game worked. The Dolphins scored 30 plus touchdowns in the run game. Tyreek Hill was the only passing threat. Jalen Waddle was pretty much neutralized in the red zone. We had no high point catchers on the team, and Jonnu Smith is that guy for the Dolphins. I think more so than he is the blocking, pulling tight end for the run game. He's more so than just the middle of the field catcher. I think he is the red zone target that they've desperately needed. Now, as far as Odell goes, I was not happy when we made the move at first. But looking at the contract numbers, he's getting paid as much as a typical three. I really am not upset about the move at all. He should be better than what we had last year. I couldn't be upset about that.
Yeah. No, I think it's more so that you see a marquee name that wasn't what he used to be, and like, oh, why would they do that? He's not what he was. But they're not signing him for what Odell was in 2015. They're signing him for what Odell is in 2020, in 2024. And I think it is. Again, it's not. I don't think it's. I mean, it is actually an exciting signing name value wise, but production wise, he's just going to be in a safe wide receiver three, which I think is fine for what Miami does. And I think it also speaks to your point about, again, spreading the ball around more. So I think in terms of skill position, they've actually upgraded. My concern is with the offensive line.
I'm
Um,
actually not as concerned about the
I'm
offensive line.
I am,
I'm really not. I'm really
and
not.
the reason, and here's the reason why. I think with the Miami Dolphins, one of the, I mean, they had a decent amount of injuries. I mean, they weren't totally ravaged, but they had. Oh, actually, towards the end of the season, they were, although they did get healthy for the Chiefs game. But one of the big injuries that I feel like not a lot of people talked about towards the end of the season was losing Connor Williams. He was one of the best centers in the league. Correct me if I'm wrong. He was
I would
he
like to
was
say that if Connor Williams was healthy, I think there's no question whether or not we win the division. I think we
Mhm.
win the division with a healthy Connor Williams. But
I think that losing him was a huge blow to your offense. And I think losing Robert Hunt, another one of your really good guards. I mean, he was an
no,
above
he
average
was
guard.
good,
He
but
was
he
I
was
don't
good.
think I'm not saying he was like an all pro level guard, but he was a good guard.
I
And
I
he
think that
wasn't
yeah. Okay, good.
and he I don't think he was replaced either. And I think that is something that really could come back to bite them, because I feel like, well, Miami never really have had great offensive lines, particularly, but we saw, I think, there were points in last year's when the points in the year where Miami were clicking on all cylinders on offense was when the offensive line was healthy, and they were like a solid offensive line. I would say they were top half. I don't wouldn't say they were top 10, but they
They're
were
they're middle of the pack.
they were a fine offensive line, and that's when they were best. I don't really like this group. I mean, they did sign Aaron Brewer, who will be their starting center in Tennessee. He's someone that I think run blocking fits very well for McDaniel in that scheme, but I think in terms of pass protection, I think he leaves a lot to be desired. And again, protecting Tua was a big concern last year, and I think again, when they were healthy, they were able to do it well, but I think that could be a concern. Robert Jones is okay, or you're putting Liam Eichenberg there, who is obviously not ideal, I feel like, for the Dolphins.
No.
Obviously, you got Teron Armstead, who always tends to miss 4 to 5 games, I feel like, every year. Um, so I feel like this is where I am concerned. This is where I feel like the Dolphins offense, which they'll still be a great offense. They'll still, I feel like, undoubtedly be a top 10 offense, probably sneak creeping into that top 5 territory. But I feel like they will regress a little bit because of those losses.
So I'll tell you why I'm not as concerned about the line as I was even last year. And I'll say it right away. The interior got worse. There's no
Mhm.
way around it. Robert Hunt leaving hurts. Connor Williams leaving, as much as I'm very happy that the bad snaps are gone, it is a detriment to the offense. But you said it yourself. Teron Armstead is going to miss 5 games a season. Getting his replacement in Patrick Paul in the draft is why I feel so confident that this offensive line is going to be stable enough to protect the quarterback. Because the problem in the interior is so avoidable, because not only does Tua have one of the better pocket presences in the league, and he can easily outmaneuver a big defensive tackle. The problems came when Teron Armstead was out, and it was a Lester, whoever was playing out there. It was
Kendall Lamb.
Kendall Lamb. Lester Cotton played a couple snaps at tackle. Having Patrick Paul, who is the prototype of what you want in this style of offense, just a guy who's going to fire out and ferociously block an edge rusher and just use his size to the advantage. And I'm not saying he's going to be perfect. I'm not saying he's going to play a lot of snaps, But when Teron Armstead is missing, it makes me so much more confident. Austin Jackson has been, again, probably the best player in Dolphins camp this season, which, again, camp is camp, but he looks like a completely new ball player. He was very good at the start of last season. He started to fall off at the tail end against the better teams, but I think the offensive line, as far as the tackles go, which is clearly the most important spot in this entire offense, barring quarterback, is I feel so much more confident in it, knowing because Armstead, when he plays, is a top five tackle in the league in my eyes when he plays, and then when he doesn't, the Dolphins' offensive line just completely tumbled. And I think bringing in Patrick Paul really helps solidify it.
Yeah, I mean, with Patrick Paul, my concern with him more so is that he is a bit of a raw player, and I feel like you could get there are a bunch of different outcomes you could get. But ideally, yeah, he is. I think there is a chance, there is a scenario where he steps up and gives you starter level play, but I think you just don't know, which is a concern. And again, I will say my qualms are more with the interior of the line, which I'm not really sure how it will hold up in pass pro. I mean, you've got Isaiah Wynn there, who I mean, he's solid. He's
He's
solid.
solid. No,
He's
the
solid. But
interior is a little bit nerve wracking, but
mhm,
the Dolphins do so much outside running. It's not a lot
mhm,
of up the gut running, which actually did hurt them in the playoffs last season and in the
mhm.
colder weather games. And again, if they don't address that, it leaves something to there. It's another thing where people were saying the Dolphins really do want to get more physical in the trenches, and then this offseason they went and they doubled down on their shiftiness and their less explosive or less angry and rough and tough guys and more just like making themselves the shifty team again, which again I feel like I don't have a problem with it because it worked so well in spurts. So I don't have an issue with them trying to just make this system work to the best of its ability.
Oh yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. And I think to the Dolphins have made it work in the regular season for long periods of time. So I do get that. And no, I think I could see it work. I think running game, I think they'll be more than fine. They might actually improve with
I think with a healthy Devon Achane, I think
I
healthy
think
Devon
Achan I
Achane
could see that. I could
makes it
definitely see
very
him.
very much a better run game. And Raheem Mostert was, I believe, the fourth leading rusher last season, the leader in
Hmm.
touchdowns.
Right.
And
In his
I
30s too. I mean,
I
kudos to
really don't.
him. I mean,
That's the thing. I really don't see him regressing that much. I think he'll get less touches because Achane's going to be healthy all year.
and
But
Jalen Wright too, I think could
Jalen
have.
Wright's going to be there. I don't know how involved he's going to be. I'd like to see him a little bit, but I'm not that concerned about Mostert falling off just because of his age because he just looks like he's getting better.
Hmm. Yeah, no. I do think that the running game will I think the running game, I find it hard to believe that they'll really lose much of a step. I think the passing game could be I think the passing game will still be good. I already addressed my concerns with that, but I think we'll leave it at that for now. But now this is the interesting part. The defensive side of the ball. And let's say if I think it's time to share the funny story that
Oh my God, yeah.
so me and Dylan were preparing for this video and we were looking at the depth chart, as we do for all of the videos. And I think one of the main concerns we had was interior defensive line. And I was talking about how the Dolphins should they're lined up in a 3-4 and their interior guys are Zach Sealer, Tyler Tart, and Deshaun Hand. And then you said, "No, we're
I,
running four." Yeah, you
Yeah,
go for it.
I said that there's no way that the Dolphins can run a 3-4 with Deshaun Hand. Deshaun Hand's been on the team for 2.5 years now. He has not played any meaningful snaps, and I just didn't trust the amount of guys and the level of player to run the 3-4 scheme. And I know that the edge rushers Miami have are pretty indicative of what you would want of a 3-4, but given the lack of real gritty inside players, I didn't think that it was a scheme that could function without Wilkins.
Mhm.
Bring in Calais Campbell, who, as
Literally.
I think 4 seconds after I said no,
Mhm,
there's no shot we can run a 3-4 with the personnel we have.
mhm.
Surge gets the alert, and there it
Calais.
is.
It
it
was
was really,
perfect
it
timing.
was
And
really
I think
funny
I'm
timing.
I'm so glad we're recording this right now because we could have recorded this a bit earlier, but we're recording this right now, right as this move happened. And it's an important move. Even with him being 38 years old, even if with it being kind of late in mid-June. This feels like an important move for the Dolphins and what they want to do with their defense. So just talk about that. What do you think about their
So it
defense?
completely sent me in a new direction because I was getting ready to see Miami run a completely new scheme for the third year in a row because I just didn't think that they were going to be,
It
and
still is a new scheme, I
it
would
will
say.
be a new scheme, but it's very much similar to what Vic Fangio did. And what the difference that I see between what Anthony Weaver has and what Vic Fangio has is less reliance on man-to-man coverage at corner because that's what really was the downfall of Miami's defense in some of their more important games was Jalen Ramsey would be able to hold up fine, but Xavier Howard looked like a husk of himself, and he was getting burned. Every time he played Stephon Diggs, every time he played a good receiver, Rashee Rice had over 100 yards in the playoff game. Stephon Diggs, Xavier Howard was just not being was not capable of holding up man to man. And that might be because Javon Holland blitzed so much. It might be because the linebackers didn't help a lot. But what's different about Weaver is the blitzing is less so it's less so for because the corners are so good, and that's what Miami used to do with Flores. It was we trust our corners to hold up so much that we're going to send the house. Weaver's blitzes are and Baltimore's blitzes, and I don't want to just box Weaver into being Baltimore because he's done more than that.
Hmm.
But what Weaver, I think he's going to run his scheme with is more so what Mike McDonald did, which is send the blitzes with some corners sometimes, send the blitzes with a lot like it's a scheme that's much more versatile and free flowing than just the standard Vic Fangio safety blitz or the Josh Boyer kind of just send Javon Holland and hope. And where I see the defense being better this year than they were last year is the linebacking core, first off, because getting rid of Jerome Baker was a thing that needed to be done, and they brought in Anthony Walker and they brought in Jordan Brooks, who are very sound linebackers. I'm not going to say they're great, but they're just a level better than what was there. Bringing in Chop Robinson in the draft, who I did not like the pick at the time of the selection, but again, just like at pretty much every pick we made, it grew on me as it went on, and we're going to be able to use his speed, especially with Phillips and Chubb missing for so long. But let's get back to the interior, where you lose Christian Wilkins, who was the best defensive player last season on the team. Maybe Jalen Ramsey, but the two are interchangeable in my eyes
Hmm.
as the best defensive player on the team.
I would say Clay. I would say Christian Wilkins
Yeah,
by a mile, I would say.
you lose the best defensive tackle or defensive lineman on your team, and you'd expect that that makes your team a significant chunk worse. But then you look around him and you see Zach Sealer, who's been one of the most underrated players in the entire league. I'm not even going to say underrated defense, one of the most underrated players in the league. Then you bring in Tyler Tart, who has been underappreciated over his time in Tennessee and in Houston, and he looks to be off to a good start in camp. I like that move a lot. Then you look at the edges. Again, two guys that are very underappreciated, and Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb coming off injuries, sure, but they are going to be back to at least 85% of what they were, and even that is a very good sign, especially with the depth that they brought in with Chopper Robinson in the draft and Shaq Barrett. So there's a lot to like when you look at Miami's defense personnel wise. And then you look at what went wrong last season, and the players just didn't like Vic Fangio. And we saw it when he left.
Is
Javon
that
Holland,
really? I mean, I
the,
get that. I agree with you that they did that. They weren't huge fans of Vic Fangio, but that was I don't feel like that was the main reason why
it
this
wasn't the
defense.
main
It
reason.
was injuries. It was injuries
It
also.
was
I will.
injuries, but they didn't like Vic Fangio. Javon Holland punted a rock when Vic Fangio left. He's saying, "Kick rocks, get out," and he confirmed it later that that's exactly what he was. Or, like he didn't confirm it in words, but he was like, "No, that's not what I was saying at all." But
Mhm.
the players didn't like him. Jalen Ramsey, in his first interview with Weaver, is he said he understands the players. And they didn't like Fangio. He was a dinosaur. They didn't fight as hard as they will for Weaver. At least that's what I saw. That being said, I have concerns about the corner room again because Jalen Ramsey is not getting better. He's Jalen Ramsey is a great corner, but he's not getting better. The other side, you have Kendall Fuller, and then the slot corners are Cater Kohu and Nick Needham. And against the best teams in the AFC, that is just not good enough. And I'm curious to see what you think about the secondary as a whole, because they brought in Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer to, not Micah Hyde,
Mhm.
Marcus May and Jordan Poyer in free agency to roam around at safety. But I'm not convinced by this secondary, and that's my main concern for the entire team, is that it just will not be able to hold up against the best teams in the league.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think I actually do agree with a lot what you said in general. I think in terms of this front seven, I would say for Miami, it's a lot less star dependent, and they have probably guys that I wouldn't say are as talented as some of the guys that they replaced, but it's a more deeper unit, I would say, which I think is good, bodes well for the Dolphins. I agree with the secondary. I agree with the secondary complaint. I mean, Jalen Ramsey was still a good corner last year, and I
He
would
was still one of
expect
the
him.
best corners in the league. He was
Yeah, yeah,
very good.
he was top 10. He was top 10. So, but and I still think he'll be a good corner next season. But I do agree with that. Kendall Fuller, someone who I think it was like heralded as a good signing because it
I
was
know.
like pretty low value, but
It was low value, but I just don't like him as a second corner. I
Mhm,
don't I don't
mhm.
want him lining up as against elite receivers
Yeah.
game out. I don't want that.
Yeah, no, I think that definitely I would say is a concern. I mean, Cater Kohu, someone who has shined
Not in the
as
slot
at
though. He really
not
didn't shine
yeah.
in the slot.
I think that is a concern. I think you could see Nick Needham being played there as well, who I
I'd
say is
rather
a better
I'd
option
rather
there.
that.
Another guy I'm surprised who actually I thought was going to get a shot to start this year was Cam Smith, who was
Yeah.
drafted last year out of South Carolina. I thought
No,
I,
I still like Cam Smith's odds to play significant minutes this season. He seems to be playing well in camp. Anthony Weaver is very he's a suitable player for a Ravens style scheme. And I think Cam Smith was one of the players that Vic Fangio just had it out for from the beginning. And for no real reason, the team needed corner help. And I
Mhm.
mean, maybe the attitude wasn't there. I don't know what happens inside. I don't think Vic Fangio just has vendettas, but there's something that was not right between the two of them, and I think that's been figured out with the new coaching staff.
Right. And no, I think it is possible. I think with the money they still did give to Fuller, I would bank on him being the starting corner at least week one.
I
But Cam
expect
Smith, I would expect to. I think. I mean, obviously, unfortunately, there are injuries in the NFL. I think he's definitely the first guy off the bench. So I do think he will be getting more minutes than he did last year, anyways. So, and then you look at the safety room. I mean, Jordan Poyer. Not a huge fan of it. Not a huge fan. I still think
should
he
have
does
happened
start
last year.
even with the
Should have happened
Marcus
last
May
year.
edition. Yeah, I agree. I thought he was. We all did think he was going to be signing there, but
I changed
yeah.
his Wikipedia page.
But yeah, no, he's fine. But Javon Holland is someone I actually am very excited to be in the scheme. I mean, someone who you have been one of the biggest proponents of Javon Holland. So, I mean, I feel like I'll let you talk on this brief.
Yeah.
But I just briefly,
So
I'll just say that. Briefly, I say I just really like, especially coming in. Like I said, you don't want to. I am kind of tying Weaver to Baltimore, but if he is bringing that scheme from there, obviously they are hugely reliant on safeties. And I'm not saying he's going to be what Kyle Hamilton was, but he's a special safety in his own right. So I'm excited to see him in that team. So yeah, you go with
yeah,
that.
you stole it from me with that last statement that he's not going to be what Kyle Hamilton was. That is literally the one thing that he can't be, is what Kyle Hamilton was and play everywhere. That because that's what made Kyle Hamilton so good. He could line up outside at corner and line up in as a linebacker. Javon Holland is the perfect prototype for the best safety in the league, but he is not going to be the versatile player that Hamilton was. But what makes him so special is that I really think that he has mastered the trade of every single thing that is necessary to being an elite safety. He is one of the best blitzing safeties in the league. He is one of the best ball hawking safeties in the league. He's one of the best tackling safeties in the league. He's, in my opinion, probably the fastest starting safety in the AFC. The NFC, it's a different question because you see some guys like in Dallas, they have fast safeties. Xavier McKinney might be faster, but in the AFC, I think Javon Holland is the fastest safety. And again, that ties into Miami being a track team, but Javon Holland has pretty much, and with the absence of a marquee season, because he's had two very good seasons, but he hasn't had an All Pro season. I think he's mastered the art of playing safety, and he is going to be, I think, the best safety in the league by some point, other than Kyle Hamilton, because Kyle Hamilton's just so special.
Yeah.
But I think he's going to be an all-pro safety in the next 2 years, and he is going to get major money. That's going to be a concern when it's a concern. But I think he is the best player on this defense now and should be looking at a special year.
hmm So I'm looking at the Miami's kind of like basic like counting stats. I don't know how much weight you can really put into this, but I was just checking. They were 22nd in total defense. No, 22nd in scoring defense last year, and they were 11th in total defense. So pretty wide disparity. But I think
Yeah,
we could average that out and say they were like middle of the pack, 6, 17, 18, like in that
yeah. I
range.
think I think the defense was hard to judge because there were a lot of games where they were so far ahead of the other team that by counting stats you kind of can't judge it.
Right, right.
But then in the important games, the defense, even though they lost these important games a lot, I think the defense held up pretty well,
hmm
especially considering some of the injuries. They
hmm
they folded in some important drives, but overall, as far as games went, I didn't think the defense was too bad.
hmm Yeah, no, I do agree. Even in that Chiefs game where they had so many injuries that they were dealing with, they still managed to really
So the
they
the
did their
corpse of
part.
Bruce Irvin came out and played pretty well. Like,
I cannot believe he played a playoff
yeah.
game in 2024. But that goes to my point. We talked a lot about the defense. You seem to be pretty a lot of the things that they did, you seem to be pretty big fans of. So, would you expect this defense to be better, regress, or stay about the same going in
So I expect the
2024?
defense to be better. The defense should be a better unit this year than they were last
Even
year,
without Christian Wilkins.
even without Christian Wilkins, based on what I see in the team. What I'm scared about is the secondary, which I still think got better than it was last year. I'm scared about the secondary because lack of depth, and I'm scared about the corner too. But I'm really nervous about injuries in this team, and that's a constant theme through the offense and the defense. Last season, Tyreek Hill played on a knock. He's 30 years old. He is the fastest player in the league, sure, but I just don't know how well he's going to hold up as a wide receiver one without injuries. Tua, again, concussions are always going to be a concern. Raheem Mostert, I said I don't think he's going to get worse with age, but injuries come more easily with age. Devon Achane was a walking hospital patient at the end of last season. The offensive line as a whole was decimated last season. Teron Armstead, again, walking hospital patient. On the defensive side, their two best edge rushers are coming off of major season-ending injuries. The defensive tackles in Neville Gallimore and Tyre Tart both came into camp out of shape. The linebackers have had injury history in the past. Jordan Brooks concussions, David Long knee injuries. Jalen Ramsey came off of a meniscus tear last season. The safeties are Jordan Poyer is 60 years old. Marcus May has not played a complete season since he was on the Jets. There is a lot to be concerned about. That's pretty much every starting player that I just named is an injury concern. And that's why, although I think the outlook of this team, and obviously OBJ, the outlook of this Jalen Waddle missed 5 games last year. Okay, I'm done. I'm done naming injured players. The outlook of this team is so much, not so much better because again, Wilkins is a huge loss. He's a very good player. The outlook of this team is better than it was last season, but I, for the life of me, cannot trust them to stay healthy.
That is fair. That is fair. I do think, particularly, I think one of the concerns also I feel like is there are certain positions where if you do lose a guy, there are serious
Yeah,
questions about who's up next,
100%, 100%. And
and
again,
and that you
you
can't
brought
have
in
that in the NFL
you
nowadays
just
with
brought in
like.
Calais Campbell, who again he's 38 years old. That's an injury risk on its own.
Mhm.
But if you lose him, he's gonna step in and start. You lose him, you're again playing Deshaun Hand in an NFL game in 2024. That's not a thing
Neville
that
Gallimore.
Neville Gallimore. It's a different spot though. Neville Gallimore is going to be the plug, and it would
Mhm.
be Tyre Tart out of position if they were to do that. So
Mhm.
I don't I don't like our depth. I don't like the injury concerns, but if I'm predicting just based on record, this team should be a 12-win team again. It was 11 wins last season, but again, it
Mhm.
was a team that underperformed last year. I
Right.
think I'm just so concerned about the injuries, and it's hard to even give a prediction. I know it's similar to what you had with the Jets, where for the Jets it was kind
Yeah.
of
No.
just like nothing ever goes your way, but for the Dolphins this year, I love this roster. I think this roster is not as good as last year in term. It's as good as last year, yes, but it's not as potent compared to the rest of the teams in the AFC because there's so many good teams this year. but
Mhm.
I just the injury concerns are so overlaying, and like more so than last year, even when Tua stayed healthy a whole year. I'm just it's so hard to know.
No, yeah, and that's what makes predicting in the NFL impossible because you don't know. There are so many variables out of a team building from a team building standpoint that are out of the team's control, and it's just it makes it very difficult to predict record, which is why depth is important. And even if there aren't injuries, even if a team manages to stay relatively healthy, I mean, nowadays you aren't playing players 100% of the snaps. You are letting a lot of rotation get in. You have to trust kind of guys that are behind to play like for some teams like 30-40% of the snaps. So it is definitely something to be fixated about. But I want to ask you one more question before
Yeah, of
we get
course.
into
Yeah,
our official record predictions because I we're gonna go game by game
yeah. Run
and
through
do
here.
that. So one of the things we talked about earlier in the video was we briefly discussed it, but we didn't really get into him. Mike McDaniel. And I know he's a he transformed the Dolphins. Let's be real. I mean, they were they really went from a team that relied on defense and was offensively basically it was basically Tua trying to, elevate a bunch of kind of
Practice squad guys. That's what it
yeah.
was, and
No, yeah.
it didn't work. It didn't work.
And it didn't work. And it didn't work. And regardless of your opinion on Tua, he didn't have a lot of help, but he was definitely the best. I would say he was one of the best players on that offense. Now you're going
The best player on the offense. No doubt about it.
healthy Devontae Parker.
Not even a comparison. Not that season. The season
Mike
before, it's 2019. He was, but the season they played together, not a comparison.
Mike Gesicki.
No,
He was a good receiver. He was a
he was
good
he was
receiver.
okay.
Well, let's not do Mike Miss
He was
Okay,
okay.
okay.
He
We're
was
getting
okay.
off topic, but okay, we're getting off topic. But the point is, Mike McDaniel was a big part. He transformed the team with his kind of. It's been obviously the Miami Dolphins have probably one of the most innovative offensive coaching staffs in the entire league, and the players love him on both sides of the ball. And obviously, the offense has thrived since he's been there. But questions have been about kind of I feel like a big concern has been his in-game management. What do you agree? That's been a big concern. And B, him coaching down the stretch. Those have been the two big concerns, and the Dolphins have kind of fallen off towards December. And other reasons have been they can't handle the cold weather. Tua just doesn't play well against better teams. Those have all been things. But I feel like one of the main constants has been is Mike McDaniel built for like kind of to keep the team like humming as they were earlier in the season, later in the season. So, what do you think about that? Do you trust him this year to improve in that aspect and make the Dolphins kind of a more successful team down the stretch than they were the past few years?
So everyone over the course of this offseason was asking McDaniel to change. And I don't want that. Mike McDaniel completely transformed this team. He made it a destination franchise for star players to come in and play. And he made it a top 5 offense in the league 2 years running. He made Tua Tagovailoa a top 10 quarterback in the league. And I mean, Tua did it himself as well, but he was a very important piece in that progression. I think it's going to turn into something where we're going to see their names attached a lot and in a good way. But the losses in the playoffs and the losses, they lost the division, they choked it away. A lot of people, and including myself, were very upset about Mike McDaniel's in game management. And I think that he knows that he messed up a lot. He said it in practically every press conference postseason that he knows he needs to coach better in game. I'm not concerned about him making the same mistakes as he did last year because he's shown that he can adapt and improve. I'm concerned about the moment being too big for him at some points because he comes in with it's like a nerd swagger, but
Mm,
he thinks he's the coolest guy in the room in every room he's in, and it's kind of like oh, it would be so cool if I pulled this off, right? At a
mm-hmm.
lot of moments, and I just don't think that that has a place in the current NFL in the playoffs. Like we see a lot of fourth down conversions, and the same thing applies to Dan Campbell in some spots. But with Mike McDaniel, it's not I'm gonna go for it on 4th and 4. It's I'm gonna go for it on 4th and 4 and do a screen pass. There's it's a lot of really just like mind-boggling decisions that he makes that I feel like are just ego play calls. He's like, "Oh, I'm so much smarter than this guy. I'm going to make this call in order to make it such a cool moment that we got this instead
And
of
to be fair,
I need to,
I will
you
say that some of it is warranted. He is
know,
one of the you
no,
yourself have
no,
said he's one of the
his
smartest quarterbacks
mind
in the
is
game.
at a level that has surpassed Shanahan. He has the best offense. No,
Wow.
listen. He has the best offensive mind in the game. I think at this point, his just straight IQ and understanding of football dynamics, he is the smartest offensive mind in the league. His problem is he knows it, and he doesn't really. He makes play calls that just maybe work out in theory, but he doesn't take into account the moment that it's in. Like, sure, a fourth and four screen pass to Tyreek Hill is like a bonkers decision to make in a playoff game, but it might have worked in week 6 against the Panthers.
Mhm.
I feel like he doesn't like diversify based on
Based
who
on
he's
the
playing.
opponent.
And we saw it 2 years ago in Buffalo. I wish it were colder. You train for a full week in air conditioned buildings in Miami. You don't go to Buffalo the day before, until the day before. Against the Chiefs, they traveled with speakers pumping in their training facility. They don't go to Germany until the day before. I feel like he thinks he can do everything in house on his own, and at times that just has not been what works. He's and people have questioned his ability as a motivator. I don't have any problem with him as a motivator. He has the locker room. He is the guy. He's not going to get fired, but uh, coming down the stretch, and there's just other things that are just corny that he does, like his running into the locker room at halftime to get away from the camera crew. That's not him like not wanting to be on camera. That's him wanting to have his moment. And then starting everything at stuff that says 24 because of the 24-year drought. That's just corny. That's not motivating anyone. That's just another headline he wants to be in. But I don't want to ragdoll on him too much because, again, I think he's a great coach and the best offensive mind in football and one of the best coaches in the NFL. But in big moments, there's no place for an ego in play calling, and they need to just trust what got them there and play that way.
Yeah, I think that's what I think. You hear about it in every sport. Trust what I think I heard in an NBA Finals broadcast, which is like something that's like I'm just gonna bring it here. Trust what you do. I think the Dolphins kind of got away from that, and partly due to injuries. I will say that, but I think specifically with the run game, that was something that really got away from them. And I think you have to have a clear mind. I mean, obviously you do. You can't like you have to change week by week. It's an evolving league. You can't show the same stuff every single week. Obviously, teams are going to catch on, but it felt like too much of like you said on going back to the beginning of the video we were talking about. It became the Tyreek Hill offense. The Tyreek Hill is great, but no one player, especially if it's not a quarterback, is going to take you to a Super Bowl that way. And I think that's where the Dolphins really ended
I
up
also
tripping up.
seriously think the Dolphins wanted to get Tyreek Hill 2,000 yards. Like that was a significant goal
Hmm.
in their
Hmm.
room was I want Tyreek to get 2,000 yards, which is ridiculous in my eyes. Like that just can't be even something that crosses your mind. If it's
Hmm.
Tyreek, it crosses your mind. If it's the offensive play calling, that's insanity.
Hmm.
Other
Yeah.
than if it's the last game, and that's like
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Mhm.
like, yeah,
But yeah. Oh, well, now we are going to go to our final segment after all the discussion about the Dolphins. Let's get into the record. So, starting off week 1, they host the Jacksonville Jaguars. I would
I
say
feel
that's a win.
I feel good about that. That's a win. And
Yeah.
early in the season, I'm gonna have a lot of wins. And
Hmm.
again, it's on paper. I think this is a top five, not maybe not top five, but a top seven, top 10 team in the league. It's just the injuries that I'm gonna give them some losses down the stretch just because
Hmm.
I can't I can't have them going 13-4. It's just not gonna happen.
I mean, it's possible. I mean, I don't think so, but yeah, yeah. But anyway, week 2, home against Buffalo. I'm gonna say that's a win too.
I
I think
like
they'll
that.
start
I
off 2
like
and
that
0.
matchup. It is a Thursday night game, so the Heat doesn't involve as much. And Josh
Hmm.
Allen has owned Miami in prime time, but I think Buffalo's gotten worse. I think Miami. I think that I've done this every time. I've given Miami every win against Buffalo. I'm gonna just do it again. It's gonna happen. This
Week
time is the time.
3, going to Seattle. Road trip. I mean, again, they'll get a mini bye, so I don't know if it'll hurt them as much. But either way, tough matchup for that Seattle defense. I think is gonna be very good next year. I'm gonna give them an L for that one.
I actually think this is a win as well. I think the Seattle defense is going to be very improved, but we're going to be seeing a Miami coaching staff now with Weaver who knows how that defense works, and it's going to be able to help them implement and understand new strategies to beat them. And if you don't recall the game against Baltimore last season, and I know they got blown out of the
Hmm.
water.
No, the start was good. The start
The
was good.
start was unbelievably good. And I
Hmm.
think that just that was a lot of star power from Baltimore coming in and coming into play and beating this Miami team on the defense. Like Kyle Hamilton and Patrick Queen had ridiculous plays. Seattle doesn't have that on their defense. They don't have those guys. I think this is a win.
Hmm. Hmm. Week 4, home against Tennessee. I'm gonna say they
I'm
win again, so
I'm
they're
going
3
4
and
0.
0 at home, 0-1.
I'm
Yeah.
going 4 0.
Mhm.
4 0. I'm gonna be, I won't be excited because it's gonna fall apart eventually,
Mhm.
but
Week 5 on the road against New England. I'm gonna say win there. I'm gonna say four
5
and
0.
one. So good start.
5 0.
Going to Indy, trap game. I'm gonna say it's an L. I'm gonna
It's a
say I
trap.
say
It's a trap game if Anthony Richardson's
trap
hurt
game. Oh yeah,
healthy.
trap game. Yeah, actually no, I do like the Colts also, but I think right now they aren't regarded as one of the best teams in the AFC, but they're a sneaky good team. So I'll say they'll lose that.
So there's no like I can't have them going 6-0, but on paper I like them going 6-0. So, I'll hand them a loss. I'll split that game between Indy and Buffalo. They'll lose one of them. We'll go 5-1.
Home against Arizona.
That's a win. That's a
That's
win.
low again. No, I'll
That's
that's a win.
a win.
I'll say a win.
6-1.
Week so 5-2. Then they go to Buffalo. That's an L. I'm
That's a
very
loss.
confident
Yeah,
they
no,
lose
they're
that.
not winning. They're not winning in Orchard Park.
Going to LA. I'm gonna say they win that. I will say they win that.
That's the
Yeah.
Rams.
The Rams.
I
The
don't.
Rams. Sorry, I should have
I don't
specified.
like that matchup. I'm gonna hand them a loss there. I don't like their
Hmm.
matchup against the Rams.
Now hosting the Raiders.
I love that.
I'm gonna say
That's
they lose. I'm gonna say they
no,
lose that one.
Miami's dominated Vegas in every game they've played since. Other than the one where Brissett stepped in, I
Mhm.
like Miami against Vegas. I'll give them a win.
I like the defense. I think also Christian Wilkins' homecoming game.
Yeah.
I think he ratchets up well against that
Well, that's
defense. I'll
gonna be
say
a
they
legendary mic'd up episode.
so 6-4
I have them at
now.
7-3.
Home against New England. I'll give them the sweep over the
Yep,
Patriots.
that's a sweep. Two has never
7
lost to the Patriots.
going to Green Bay in November. Handed them an L
That's
for
a loss.
there.
That's an
I'll
absolute
say
loss. That's going to be
7-5.
the game that starts unraveling the team.
Mm. Home against the Jets.
That's a win.
You guys always
That's
beat
a
us in
win.
Miami, especially late season. I'll say you take it.
Yep.
8-5.
So I think I have
Away.
wait, do I have one more I have two more wins than you. So I'm 10 and no, I'm 9-4. I'm 9-4.
Mhm. Uh, on the road against Houston. I'll say you take an L there.
I think that's two straight losses.
Hmm.
It's 9-4.
So, yep, 8-6, and then I think you lose again the next week to San Francisco, going 8-7.
So Miami's had bad streaks. So yeah, I'll give them another loss. That's going to be 9-6.
Hmm. Away again. This is a tough stretch now. Now you got the Browns on the road. I don't
I'm going
like
to
that
give them
matchup
that
for you
one.
either.
I'm going to give them
I'm gonna say you drop 3 straight. You go 8-8.
I'm going to give Miami this one. I'm going to give
Or you know what? I'm gonna split it. You know what? I'm gonna split it between the Texans game and the last game, which is the Jets, which I think you'll take one because I don't see you guys losing 4 straight at the end of the year. So I'll say that one of those is a win, and you guys will end up 9-8.
I think we sweep the Jets and we go 11-6.
Hmm.
I think that it just has to go right this time. Just
Yeah,
on paper, it has to go right. You can't go and lose 6 games in a row, 3 seasons. Like it's just it just can't happen.
yeah. For me, 9-8,
I think 11 and
probably missing. I would say that would likely be missing the playoffs.
I think
And
it's
I feel like it's. Sorry, you go ahead.
yeah, potentially a division winner, potentially a wild card, but 2 wins at the
Mhm.
end of the season could help them out for the division.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I feel like 9-8. I think is an appropriate record for them. I still think they'll have a great offense, but there are. I mean, Weaver, I think is a good addition, but also there are questions about losing Wilkins. D line is a lot of new faces, but also there isn't a lot of depth there. Secondary also has some concerns, so I could see that losing a few games. Obviously, the offensive line, I expressed my concerns there. But at the end of the day, this is also one of the most talented um teams, like in terms of certain skill, in terms of the skill positions, which is always gonna steal you a few wins there. So I think 9-8, appropriate record. I think it could range anywhere from I would say 12 to I would say your floor would be like 7, I would say, realistically. But yeah, that's what I would say. Yeah. Anything you want to finish off with?
I think that this team is really well built. Again, the injuries are my main concern, but This is a team that needs to win some big games this year. And if they don't win a playoff game, this whole experiment's been a failure. That's not to say that they should start over or anything, but this is the year that if they don't win, it's clear to see that they did not get the best out of this group. Tua's contract is something we'll be touching on in the future. I'm hoping to have a full show, just every team topics across the board at some point soon. We appreciate you guys for coming in and watching and paying attention. And if you made it this far, congrats.
Yeah. You should, if you're not subscribed, you should subscribe
Yeah.
because you must have enjoyed what we did. But
Yeah.
yeah, yep. I like you said, appreciate you for watching the video. We're on Instagram, TikTok as well, Spotify, Apple Tunes, I believe. So
Yeah.
make sure to follow us on all that stuff. Again, we're trying to get more videos out, so you will make sure to stay tuned. We don't know. We just pick the teams on the fly at this point.
Yeah.
Your favorite team might be next,
You
or
know what?
maybe they
Leave us a
have.
comment on who you want us to do next,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
that
yeah,
would make
yeah.
it a lot easier.
That actually would be. That would be.
Yeah.
Or if we've done your favorite team already, make sure to check out
Yeah.
our other videos. And yeah, that's it for the video. Thank you for watching.